but we can't. We're officially on air. No one's really watching, but this is just so we can get it up to YouTube without having to transfer at all. But I've known Dave for a long time. I've gotten to work with him on a lot of films, including Man from Reno a bit. And I am a huge Dave Boyle fan. And so with most of these, so we'll just do a little Q&A here. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then they'll come up and ask you questions.
Okay.
With most of the films that we watch, it's really exciting to have the filmmaker here. It's exciting to have you here. But I know a lot about this movie. I know a lot about this movie. And so I'm just going to ask questions that are more geared towards the audience.
Sounds good.
First of all, tell me about Man from Reno and where the story came from, because as some of these guys may know, prior to that, you were making kind of quirky little comedies, and this was a big departure for you genre-wise. So let's talk about that.
Well, it was a departure in terms of what I was making, but it really wasn't a departure in terms of the kind of movies that I love and the kind of movies that I like to watch. Like it was funny. There was this disconnect for a long time of the kind of movies that I was concentrating on making and the kind of movies that I was paying my $12 or however much movies cost at the time to see. And somewhere along the line, I kind of became cognizant of that and felt like I had the confidence to try something that was a little more ambitious plot-wise. I think that I was kind of following the write what you know advice, you know, and so what I was making were a lot of fairly pleasant movies that didn't have a whole lot of stakes or conflict in them, because my life was fairly pleasant and didn't have a whole lot of stakes or conflict in it. And I guess I just kind of realized that, you know, my strength is not trying to document a slice of life. My strength is just storytelling, making up stories. So that's kind of where it began. I mean, there were some false starts along the way. I wrote a couple of different scripts. I'm sure that you remember that didn't end up getting made before the opportunity that Man from Reno eventually became. But one of those was a big budget movie set in Japan, and then you know, the people who were helping me put it together didn't think it was going to happen, but felt like they could help put together something that was small and had some Japanese cast, but set in America. And so it really just kind of came down to jumping on that opportunity. You know, I had the kernel of an idea for a movie. I wanted to make a movie called Man from Reno, but not actually set it in Reno. Because there's like this old movie called That Man from Rio, and you know, I just thought it was sort of a funny joke, like this funny joke, like I'm gonna make a movie called Man from Reno, but none of it's gonna take place in Reno. And then there was this other idea that I had that was, I just wanted to make a movie where it was two separate plot lines, and you're not sure if they're even taking place at the same time or how they're connected. And you know, I always loved the Woody Allen movie Crimes and Misdemeanors, and that one takes the conceit all the way. The two stories don't ever connect until the very last scene, except in kind of peripheral ways. But you know, I was trying to do something with a more straightforward genre narrative, but experiment with it a little bit. You know, like I'd never seen a movie with a Japanese woman and an aging sheriff teaming up to solve a mystery, and that sounded like a movie I wanted to see. So that's right. Sort of not a whole lot of thought went into it, really.
Well, you have, okay, so let's talk about wait, first of all, is Micah here? Oh, there you are. So we have Micah. We have Micah Dahl Andersen in the house.
No way.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Micah sitting here in the back is, I didn't recognize you in this sort of incognito. He's got a beard and everything. Micah is the composer of the film. So he lives here in Provo, and we were chatting today, and I said, coincidentally, we're watching Man from Reno. So I guess if you guys have questions for Micah as well, he's here and he can answer those.
Can't keep calling on the keyboard.
That's all right. You gotta include the cat, Dave. I know you. So let's talk about how you write with Joel and Clark and Mike Lerman, who are credited as writers for this and your previous few films, and it's an interesting process, I know, because I've been able to kind of watch that, and I know you kind of go in spurts with those guys and then on your own a bit. And can you tell me kind of how that happens? And also, just coincidentally, Joel Clark, who co-wrote this, was one of the guys who, one of the writers from Exquisite Corpse Project. We showed that a couple months ago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. So he was the guy with the rose tint glasses who got really pissed and wrote the bad section. So,
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit. And Dave helped edit the Exquisite Corpse Project. So we have kind of a Dave Boyle, Joel Clark theme going this semester. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's funny, like Joel. So the process, my process of working with Joel and working with Lerman is very, very different from each other. I feel like it's funny to say that I use them, but I use them in very different ways. And Joel actually was just here in LA for 2 weeks to work on a draft of something new, and then Lerman just moved to LA, like, you know, a few blocks from me. So I'll be seeing more of him than usual. But I think with Joel, you know, I'll go to him with an idea, and he can just crank out pages and pages and pages and pages and run through it and kind of let me edit that or take that as a starting point, and then we trade back and forth, or I'll write something and I'll send it to him, and he will obliterate it, start all over and make it better. You know, it's this constant sort of one-upsmanship. I think with Lerman, I usually don't work with him from the beginning. I usually have him come in when I have a draft, or when me and Joel have already gotten through a couple of passes, and he's the monkey wrench guy, because usually the first thing that I can always count on him to be brutally honest. He's less of a go with the flow type of collaborator, and more of a this sucks, we need to fix it type of collaborator. And not necessarily this sucks, it's just he has very specific taste and ideas, and he also understands, you know, part of he is a film programmer. He programs for the Toronto Film Festival, for the Philadelphia Film Festival, all this. So he watches, you know, 3,000 movies a year. And so it's really hard to get anything by him. You know, if Lerman says something is unpredictable, then it must be crazy unpredictable. So he's watching movies and reading scripts from a very different perspective than me or Joel, or most people for that matter. So, for example, he was the first person to suggest that maybe Aki shouldn't make it to the end of Man from Reno. He wasn't the one who did a lot of the kind of elbow grease to figure out how that was possible plot wise, but he throws in those curveballs. And then there's other scenes, like my favorite scene in Man from Reno is when the guy with the bandage comes.
Are you still there? We lost you, Dave.
Like you're frozen. Are you still hearing me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Oh, great.
Can you You just, hey, I've got you back. Do you have me?
Yeah, I was talking for a long time before I realized that.
All right.
Dude,
Well, so do you see me now? Because we have you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on.
Here, and let me close all my other windows. I think maybe that's part of the problem. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're great now. Yeah.
Okay. What was I saying when I froze?
You were saying your favorite part in Man from Reno is the man with the bandages, and then you cut.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when he shows up at our hotel room and he's asking about the lettuce and stuff, and that was something that Lerman wrote, and the scene remained unchanged from that draft. Like we just never touched it. It was one of the only scenes that made it through all the way to the end. And I think that he has, you know, his Joel's great strength is his wit and his ear for dialogue and for character and all that, and Lerman's great strength is his eye for construction and also just for being able to make the suggestions that everybody else doesn't want to make because it means starting over from scratch, and that's really annoying. You know, and for both of them, it's not, at the end of the day, if I'm the one directing, then I have to make the decision about which direction that we're going. But and both of them are really good about talking me out of bad ideas, but also understanding when I'm like, I understand that you feel this way, but this is how it's going to be, kind of thing. So it's a great group of people to work with.
Awesome. Well, tell us then, because you've also worked with different actors over the years, and Pepe Serna, this is his third film. He plays Sheriff Del Moral. And can you talk about, and Aiko, you'd worked with before, can you talk about writing? How often do you write for specific actors, or do you think that maybe it'd be this actor, or do you bring them in early on to collaborate at all with story, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think out of necessity, a lot of the time I've written for you know, cast ahead of time or cast in my head, and in this case it was no different. I mean, I've known you've probably told them about how 10 years ago you and I, when we were making our first movie, cast Pepe Serna, and he just flew in for a day. And I was just always impressed with him, because it was basically, for all intents and purposes, a student film. You know, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but you know, it was.
We were learning.
We were learning, yeah. And then this guy who was a total pro, who's been in, you know, 100 movies, 300 TV shows came out, and he was treating everybody like an equal. You know, he was leading by example. Everybody kind of raised their game when he was around, and he made a big impression on me, and so I always kind of kept him in mind over the years. And Man from Reno that's a different kind of role than he usually plays. He usually plays like really colorful side characters, and I kind of wanted to see him play like the kind of role that, you know, Gene Hackman or Tommy Lee Jones, those kind of guys just get to play. And so yeah, we wrote that with him in mind. And Ayako is also, she's somebody who, you know, has some fame in Japan. She was in a bunch of kaiju movies and was a child star, and then moved on to become a novelist, and then starred in a movie version of one of her own novels. And we became friends in LA. She played a little part in me and Duane's last movie before this one, Daylight Savings. And you know, that role is a really difficult one to cast, because of the dual language thing, and also just somebody who wouldn't overplay that part. It felt to me like a part that was just begging to be underplayed. And you know, Japanese acting style in Japan just kind of demands, it usually is this very very big kind of soap opera-y style, and if the audience there doesn't have that, then they feel like it's bad acting. So having somebody who was brave enough to naturally kind of go against that current was really important. But then the guy who played the man from Reno himself, Kazuki, I mean, he is a big star in Japan, and honestly wasn't on our radar at the beginning because we just thought there was no way he would do it. It's like doing, you know, if a $200,000 Japanese movie was like, well, maybe we should try, you know, maybe we should try Johnny Depp and see if he'd be in our little movie or something like that. But somehow the script got to him, and he read it, and it was honestly on the page. I think he brought a lot to it that wasn't on the page. It could have very easily been like a, you know, Law and Order villain of the week type of psycho role. But he brought a lot of nuance to it, and we rewrote it once he was cast to give him a little bit more to do. You know, it's kind of hard when the whole secret of the character is that he has no identity. He is the man with no name kind of thing. I think that there, as a result, on the page, it read a little boring, you know, because we're just like, well, we don't know who's going to play this guy. We don't know how old he's going to be. We don't know what he's going to look like. We don't know anything. And the whole point of the character is that he is nobody. So that, unfortunately, I think kind of made the character read a little bland. And we didn't change that much, but we gave him a little bit more to do, and him just kind of bringing his energy to it did wonders.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw his you first showed me some of those scenes, I was really knocked out. It was great.
Yeah, they played a lot better than they read.
But it was a good script. Okay, we're going to turn it over to questions. So you've been thinking of questions, and that's why you're here. So come on up. When you come up, introduce yourself and ask a question.
Sorry, it's like stadium seating. Takes a while to get up.
Right.
So my name is Liz, and I usually wait until the very end to ask a question while I'm racking my brain. But the entire movie, I was wondering about the audio and all of the music that you did and how you decided who to go with for the score. But then he's sitting right here, so I think that's all I have.
You could ask him. Well, Micah, you know, he is actually a man from Reno, so he was uniquely qualified to do the score. Yeah, Micah has done a lot of music and sound for some of my other films, but he'd never done like the full beginning to end score, which is something that I really wanted to do together. So we started talking about this movie 2 years before he actually sat down to start recording. He was one of the first people that I was telling about it when I was writing the script and everything. And you know, it's one thing to talk about it in theory, like this is the kind of movie it's going to be, and this is the feel I want to go for and everything. But you know, it was once the movie was actually done and picture locked and everything, and we got down to do, you know, him actually doing the work of recording the score, then it was a pretty short time period. He had a pretty tight deadline to do all of that music, which is unfortunately kind of the way it goes. It's like there's post-production are always gets squeezed because all the money and time run out when you're shooting the movie. But we talked a lot about, because one of the things I love about Micah's music is that it keeps me totally enveloped, and I'm not just talking, like, I'm talking about all of his music and it has like this really organic quality to it where I don't always know. I'm not thinking about what instruments I'm listening to necessarily. He has a talent for finding really unique sounds without it sounding precious or super digital or any of those other things. I mean, even though he's creating a lot of these sounds digitally, obviously, like it always sounds to me very organic and textured, and so that was, you know, that was something that was important to me for this movie. I wanted a sound that I hadn't heard before, but at the same time hits those thriller beats that the genre needs to keep people in, especially since it's such a slow burn of a movie. The music is kind of the thing that I think keeps people from turning it off a lot of the time.
So I know that you said you rewrote the script several times, especially several sections, and after you found actors to fill those roles, you rethought it. But how often does it happen when you're shooting and you think, oh, I just got the greatest idea ever, or is the idea just kind of beaten out by the time you get to film?
There've been a few times when you have an idea during the shoot. More often than not, though, I mean, I read a lot about filmmakers who are writing scenes at night and getting them out to their department heads for the next day's shoot. And for me, I can't really think that way. It's all about kind of, you know, the script is obviously a jumping off point, but I try to make what we have better rather than creating something new on set. I did do one movie where we were making up scenes on the day, a whole cloth, and it was interesting. It was, but what I learned from that experiment is that that's not a productive way for me to work. Like I need to have everything set in stone. I need to have everything kind of pre-imagined and figured out, or else I'm not happy and the results are, you know, mixed
Together, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you decided to write this and you knew that you wanted to have it be The Man from Reno, and you wanted it to be more of a mystery thriller than maybe previous movies, did you write it from beginning to end and figure out that and then go back and revise, or did you kind of start with the end?
I very much just started from the beginning and then got completely lost in the middle, set it aside for a while, went back to it. And it was funny, I found an early draft of the script that's really good, and it is completely different. You know, I could go out and shoot it and release it as a completely different movie. It's so different. So and that version of the script was, I think I only got like 60 pages in, and it was all Pepe's character. There was no Japanese subplot in that particular draft. I feel like for me, I mean, it's always better if you have the destination figured out. And other filmmakers that I work with always talk about endings are easy. You know, it's the second act that's hard. I've never found that to be true, though. I think that my strength is coming up with a premise, and then I kind of need that time in the development stage to get lost in the story, you know, to kind of get lost in the fog. And then once I figure it out, then I start at the end and work backwards. But there's something about, I've never had a good script result from figuring out the ending from the beginning. It's always been, I have this premise, I get completely lost in it, and then I figure out some steps down the line, or one of my co-writers or somebody else figures it out for me. You know, maybe somebody gives a suggestion that just kind of happens to work. And I don't know, I read a lot about how the writers like Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler would work, and you know, they wrote mystery stories, but they never figured it out ahead of time. They just kind of make stuff up as they went along, and then tie it all together at the end somehow. And some of their their plots as a result are just totally impenetrable. But that's part of the fun of it too, you know. I think on Man from Reno, we had a really elaborate plot, and we tried to cinch up every last detail, but it's still is confusing for people, and that's kind of part of for me, that's like the pleasure of reading a good mystery or watching a good mystery film, is that confusion.
Yeah, and a little bit of nausea at the end when everybody dies.
Good, yeah.
I know, not always good, but no, very well made.
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah, you want nausea at the end of a movie, but not when you've just eaten at Chipotle.
Right, we didn't do that. Thank you.
Hey.
Hey.
My name's Sam. I think I actually met you when we were at the LA trip.
Yeah, I remember you. Yeah.
Hey, so yeah, I was actually just wondering again with like the collaboration thing that you were talking about. You were saying like on how your collaborators were good at like knowing kind of like when to step down when you said this is kind of the way it needs to be. How do you like find a way to kind of like balance that so that it's like you are like making sure you're getting your vision across, but you're not like being the guy from Project Greenlight who's just kind of being a diva about it, so to speak?
Yeah, I don't know that there is necessarily a that's a tough question. It kind of comes with I think it comes to a certain extent with experience. I feel like in the grand scheme of things, I'm very green, but having made you know, a few feature films, I at least have been through the process of insisting that it's my way or the highway, and having good results and bad results from that. And so, you know, you kind of go through a post-mortem process on each project, figuring out what went right and what went wrong, and being able to evaluate that is pretty important, I think. You know, the one thing, I mean, I watched Project Greenlight too, and but I think, you know, it's really easy to I read something great that somebody was writing about on Twitter, about how a lot of great directors aren't great because of like the crazy stuff that they do. They're great in spite of those things, you know. Like you always read the fanboys or the critics talking about how, you know, David Fincher does 107 takes of every shot, or what, you know, just stuff like that. And I think that, you know, I think that if he could nail it in 3, he'd probably be happy to, you know. And so I think that I don't know that it's something that you should worry too much about. It's just, as long as you are doing what's best for the movie, then nobody's gonna care later that you disagreed with them. Like nothing matters as long as you're right, you know. But if somebody has a good idea, then it's, no matter what the consequences are, it's good to at least, you know, consider it. And so I mean, as is always going to be the case, there's limitations in movies. Sometimes people will have a great idea, and it's just not possible budget wise, or it's not, you know, there's any number of reasons why it won't work. And so I mean, you have to be smart about those things. But yeah, I think, you know, that's something that I'm still learning, and probably every filmmaker, if they're honest with themselves, it's something that they are, you know, continually striving to be better at.
Yeah, thank you. Also,
sort of a rambling non-answer, but hopefully that
actually really helps. And also, when we were in LA, I kind of talked about editing on like other projects, but I was just wondering, I noticed you did your own editing with Collaborators on here. but
Yeah.
normally like people say directors shouldn't edit their own films. I was just wondering like, how does that like work best with you? Because I thought the editing was like really well done in this actually. Like it didn't seem.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think if possible, it's usually better to have somebody else edit your films. I didn't edit my first. I guess I did some on me and Duane edited my second feature together, but it was mostly Duane. And then I didn't really kind of take the lead until my third feature on it, and I just think that there is no harsher judge of my own work than me, and more often than not, people are having to talk me into putting stuff back in than cutting it down. And you know, with Man from Reno, we I feel like every movie is like this process of you have this great idea, and then, or you have an idea, maybe it's great, maybe it's not, and then you kind of fall out of love with that idea, or you forget what you loved about that idea in the first place. And with Man from Reno, you know, the first cut was pretty long. It was like 2.5 hours long, and I kind of panicked, you know, or I didn't panic. It was just I had been living with it for so long that I was like, you know what? We need to get this thing moving like gangbusters. We need to cut it like. So anyway, the second cut of the movie was just a completely different experience because we were cutting out of the middle of scenes between Aki and Del Moral, you know, back and forth, back and forth. It was way shorter. But what we found was that just didn't work at all. Like the movie wanted to have this slow burn pace to it. Because when it was faster, not only was it harder to understand, but it was boring. It was boring because there was no mystery. You know, there was no you can't really hypnotize the audience. There was no atmosphere. You know, there were all kinds of problems with it, but it was a big education to me in kind of, you know, that you can't shorter is usually better. You know, my film before this one was 75 minutes long, and you know, it probably should have been like more like 30 minutes. But that was sort of a big lesson to me in not forgetting what you loved about an idea in the first place. You know, I do find that people will always respond to design. You know, and what I mean by design is like it feels like it's thought out. It feels like it's put together. Each shot leads to the next. People will always respond to that, even if the execution is somehow shaky in a way, which, let's face it, on a tiny budget movie, it always is going to be in some respect. They're always going to respect and be drawn in by that design more than they will be on some kind of, you know, some kind of rushed, patched together Band-Aid job, or something that feels like it was that it was just thrown together, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a big lesson that I learned.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you. Thanks. This is a really good movie. So yeah,
Thanks. Thanks for checking it out.
Hey, good evening. My name's Scott. I really enjoyed your film. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Too tall.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I'm gonna come and fix that. Okay. There we go. So the question I have for you, it kind of goes along with Sam's question. So obviously you wore a lot of hats in this film. What was your favorite part of, you know, the whole process, writing it, directing it, editing it?
Finishing it.
Finishing it, probably.
Yeah, I think so. I think I mean, I think that the writing of it was probably the most pleasurable, even though it took a long time and it was really challenging. And looking at that script now, I feel like I see a lot of growing pains from all of us. Generally, I'm not a big fan of being in production. I prefer solitary work, so editing or writing, where anything where you're not having to answer questions from 100 people 6 million times a day, I much prefer. I mean, when we're actually in production and I'm directing, I find that my head I'm unable to think about anything else until it is over, and I turn into a different person, and I'm not sure that I really like that person, but it's part of the job. But I think that the other part that I love is the sound mix, actually, because you're almost at the end, and it's a chance to, you're solving the last few problems, hopefully, or papering over the last few problems. You're putting on that last layer of frosting to kind of help the cupcake go down easier. So there's a great deal of satisfaction in that, because the light at the end of the tunnel is so close. Well, at least it feels so close, because making the movie is really only half the process. Then you have to get it out there, and that's like its own. Yeah, you're really only like, at the sound mix, you're really only like 35% through the whole process. But still, it feels like you're almost done. So that's nice, as long as you lie to yourself and tell yourself that it's almost over. So yeah, I don't know. I don't like any of it. I'm just a miserable person.
Being so miserable, do you have anything else cool coming up?
Yeah, I'm working on a movie. It's supposed to happen pretty soon, and I'm been getting a lot of Fast and Furious producer notes on it. I'm really happy with the script. It's still got a little ways to go before it's totally ready, but yeah, should be shooting soon. And then yeah, that's the thing that's probably closest to being ready to go. So
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, enjoy.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Hey, my name's Benji. Awesome film. Thanks for letting us watch it. I had a question for you. Kind of as the director and maybe through the writing process, kind of talked about how there was a lot of different ways you could go with it, and you did lots of revisions and different drafts. As a director, you kind of have to have the vision and have the final say in things. I imagine there's often times where you maybe doubt your decisions, or maybe kind of doubt yourself to the point of being paralyzed. I don't know if that ever happens to you, but like maybe you could talk about that a little bit and how you get over that doubt and kind of go with your confidence and your choices and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's yeah, it can be a little, when everybody's waiting on you, because when you're the director, you're the one who, when it comes down to it, other people can help things move along, but you're the one who's setting the tone for things and setting the pace for things, and kind of making the decisions on how things are going to go. There can be times when it's a little scary. I think that the right decision is just to always keep going, especially on low budget movies like this. I mean, I can't remember who said it. Somebody told me, like, the right decision on a low budget movie is always to keep shooting, like if you lose the location, like figure out some other way to shoot. You lose the actor, figure out some way. You know, there's always big decisions to be made, and they need to be made fast. And sometimes people are not happy with the decision that you make. On Man from Reno specifically, I can remember one thing that I was scared about. The billionaire who was dying, the Stephen Luft character. So
Yes.
we had an actor cast, we had a location, we had a date. You know, there was a day in the schedule to do that, and I could just tell that it was just not going to work. I mean, the actor that we found, he was a perfectly fine actor. It was just something was wrong with it, and I couldn't quite put everything was wrong. You know, he was wrong, the location was wrong, and so I decided to cancel that day of shooting, which did not make. It was not a popular decision. It cost a lot of money, and yeah, I don't know. It was, but the other thing was that we were coming up on the day when we had to shoot that opening scene with the fog and the car stunt and everything, and we hadn't really had the time to prep, and I felt like we really needed that day to get that scene right, and then take the extra time to cast the right actor in that part, find a better location, all that jazz. And so we did it, and you know, in the end, I think everybody agreed that it was the right thing to do. I also remember shooting, like in the movie, it's only about 3 seconds long. Probably because like once we got into the edit, we figured out it was an unnecessary scene, but that stuff of her in Tokyo when she's like talking with her agent and she's at some sort of party or book signing or something.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember it. It goes by real quick. But in the script, that was like a 2 or 3 page scene, and we had 60 some odd extras and a big location in LA that we transformed into Tokyo. And I remember that scene being like the point where I hit like my peak exhaustion. You know, it was like we had like 5 days left to go, and I could not get that scene to work. You know, like everybody was doing a great job except for me. I could not figure out what was wrong with it, why it was wrong, and later upon reflection, it's because it was an unnecessary scene in the script. We just did not need that scene to happen. But I do remember just trying all. I don't remember the shot that we were shooting, but there was, yeah, it was like a close up of Aki or something, and I was trying all these things, trying, you know, have the camera move like this, you know, and finally Rich, the DP, like put the camera down, and he was like, "What are we doing here?" And you know, and he was right. I was trying to overcompensate. I was trying to figure something out that was very, very simple. You know, the problem was not with what we were shooting. The problem was not with how we were shooting it. The problem was that we were shooting it at all. Like it was just, it was not necessary. But you know, we got the pieces that we needed to kind of just give a little glimpse into her past, and we moved on. But that I remember as being that simple little scene, I remember as being way more tense and difficult for me as a director than the opening of the movie, which was much more technically demanding, all these other way more complicated scenes. Of everything, it was that simple little scene that stressed me out more than anything. So, you know, it happens to everybody. You just got to shake it off and move on.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you.
You bet.
How you holding up, Dave? You holding up all right for maybe one more? Or?
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm good. I can go all night.
You can go. In fact, he did. In fact, this is how I learned about YouTube on Air, or whatever it's called. No, it's Google Hangouts on Air. Is as part of his Kickstarter to raise money for this, more like the post-production, right, of the film.
Mhm.
He did these 24-hour marathons on YouTube where he stayed up doing this, exactly this, for 24 hours. It's pretty impressive, and you can watch that. You could watch that 24 hours. It's there. It's on
You
YouTube.
see photos of me before. I looked completely different. It's like those meth addict pictures.
Yeah.
Like that 24 hours aged me like 10 years.
Yeah, I got on for about 10 minutes, and I was like, "Have fun, Dave. That looks great." Okay, let's do one more question, or maybe we won't do any more questions. Yes, come on. I'm gonna drag Micah up here too.
Good. Yeah, I want to see Micah.
There we go. I don't know. Not that tall as was the other person. Okay. All right. My name is Kendall. I like writing a lot. I mean, just as a hobby, and then as a newcomer about learning about scripts and so forth, and learning about filmmaking in general. What inspires you to make a script, or when you come on board making a film inspired by a story, but when you learn about the location, do you find inspiration being limited with the certain certain locations and props and limited actors to become as an inspiration to your script, or do you just immediately make up a neutral platform before you even know your limitations before filming?
Well, it depends. Yeah, no, that totally, I totally understand what you mean. I mean, it kind of depends. Like if I'm writing something that I'm hoping to, where the sky's the limit, you know, I'm taking it to my managers to try to get meetings to get it set up at a studio or something like that, then I don't worry about limitations at all. You know, I just write how I think it should go. For the most part, when I'm writing something that there is an end in sight, you know, maybe there's a producer or a financier on board, and I kind of have maybe a ballpark budget that I know I have to limit myself to, then I write a lot differently. Then it's a process of you know, trying to make sure that the story that I have in my head is an appropriate scope for the resources on hand. I should say, by the way, that Man from Reno is a very bad example of that. It's actually a pretty good example of what not to do. I feel like you get like a free pass to pull that kind of thing once in your lifetime, and now that I've played that card, I could never do it again, because there were we had 50 locations, something like 50 speaking parts, all on a budget where usually you would be limited to 2 or 3 locations and a handful of people. But it really just, it came down to every single person in my life pitching in and making that happen, and pulling every kind of favor that I could. And so I don't know. I don't think that Man from Reno is a good example of, you know, a $200,000 movie. But the other thing is that I don't think I could have pulled it off as my first film. You know, I had the experience of making all these other movies, so I kind of knew how to stretch my dollar from those previous experiences, because, you know, some of the other movies cost maybe more than they should have. You know, I've been on both ends of the scale. But I think in the writing process, generally, even though maybe I might think of things in terms of limits and budget and what I have on hand, I try not to let that inhibit the storytelling. I mean, if I usually don't take on a project unless there's like this gravitational pull towards the story, or if there is a bullseye of opportunity where I know this movie is going to happen, you know, because there's a lot of like fake. You can waste years of your life on fake projects that are never going to get made, that are never going to happen. But if there's, you know, if you run into an opportunity where it's like this is going to happen, then I usually grab that and hold fast. So I don't know if I answered your question at all.
No, I just wanted to explore like the writing matter of just getting that brainstorm of just creating a platform that you didn't even know that it was going to launch, but then you decided this script is going to launch, let's put this aside. And then, I don't know, it's just kind of like writing stories on the shelf and picking the ones that comes out. And so have that little insight of what goes on and often, because I imagine there's a lot of projects saying this could happen, but yet with the locations that we have, it just hinders from the story to become blossom out of something, become into I don't know, motion picture screen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're starting out, you probably just don't want to worry about how you're going to make it happen. You just want to write as much as you can, and because honestly, you know, most of what you write early on is probably not going to be very good, but it'll get better and better as long as you keep at it. But don't worry too much about the logistics of production and all that kind of stuff, because somebody else will worry about that. You know, you'll learn about that as you go along. I like to keep like a folder of all my abandoned story ideas or things that didn't turn out well, and which are many. You know, I have dozens and dozens of these sort of half-finished things that, you know, were not good. But then years later, sometimes I dig them out, and there's something in there that maybe is a kernel for a new script, or gives something I can crib for whatever I'm working on currently, and yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for this talk, because it's just something that I don't normally get a chance to. So it was a great privilege to see snippets of your film and actually seeing your words coming at and captivation onto screen.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks. My pleasure.
Hey, Micah, come up here. Is there anyone else just burning with a question before we?
Micah Dog Andersen, come on down.
Brianna, come up here real quick.
What's up, Dave?
Hey, well, you have a beard.
I know.
Yeah.
Hey, we're gonna hold Micah for
I
just a
just
second.
have a really quick question. Hi, I'm Brianna.
Hey.
I met you in LA.
I remember. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. I had a question about the dialogue, the choice of having two different languages, and you know, you'd have to write two scripts, right? You have to do all English.
Yeah.
So why do you it's cool, but what made you want to do that? You know?
Well, in this case, it was the prime. I mean, that was the opportunity at hand. There was a Japanese production company that was willing to put in X amount of dollars, but the movie had to have, you know, Japanese and English dialogue in it, and you know, it's an interesting challenge. I've always been interested in multilingual movies anyway. I was, you know, totally on board with that idea. I speak Japanese, but I will admit that it did kind of hamstring me to a certain extent as a director, because I don't have perfect understanding of the nuances of the language and culture and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that it was it was an interesting challenge. It created more challenges down the road, commercially speaking. But it's like, anyway, the short version of that answer was that was the opportunity at hand. That was basically one of the limitations that we were dealing with. Like, the budget is going to be X amount of dollars, and it's going to be in these languages, that kind of thing. But
do you think
it was
it
exciting.
paid off in the end? I think, like, with all the challenges,
Yeah, no, I think that I mean, I'm pretty happy with the way that we used the language and culture difference in the movie.
I think, yeah.
So I think, oftentimes these kind of mixed culture movies turn into some sort of didactic thing where there's a lot of speechifying of well, in Japan we do things this way type of. And I think we made a conscious effort to try to avoid that and make it an enjoyable experience for both audiences, and I feel like we succeeded in that respect.
Cool. I do too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, does everyone have questions for Micah Andersen here? He's the composer. If not, Dave and he could just chat.
Dave, let me tell you about what happened with my beard. I got on a film, and when I came out of the studio, this was on my face. And,
Really?
yeah.
What about the glasses?
Oh,
Whoa, you got a ponytail too.
Yeah. It was a long film. I've always been blind. I usually wear contacts, but they're like, you're supposed to leave them in for like a week and then take them out. I wore those contacts for like 6 months, and one of them fell out this morning, and I was like, I should probably wear my glasses for a few weeks.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that, man. You could go blind. Didn't you hear about the girl in, I forget where she was, but she went blind because she left her contacts in too long. Guys, you got to understand that when Micah and I were working on this film, he was clean. He looked like he was straight out of the MTC with a part in his hair and clean cut. Look at him now, all rock and roll.
Taking my step or whatever that is. Yeah.
All right. No questions for the composer who's here in person. All right.
There's got to be.
Here's a question.
Here's a question.
Well, this kind of question. I'm just wondering where I can find the music to listen to, because I love listening to film score, and I particularly
Oh, cool. Well, there's a few snippets on my website, but I haven't put it up anywhere. You know what? I'll put some up on Bandcamp, and then it'll be available. You'll be able to go see it from my website, which is micahdahl.com. And then, yeah, I'll just have a link to it. I'll try and get that up as soon as possible.
Thanks.
Cool.
You own the rights to the soundtrack, man.
I do.
Sitting
Yeah.
on a cash cow there. There's your first sale right there tonight.
Nice. Yeah. The lucrative world of
Benji.
How do you go about collaborating with the director? I mean, how do you give the director what he wants while also still throwing in your layer personality, I guess?
Well, it's different with every director. With this one,
Dave, could you hear that question?
yeah, can you say that?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So, because that's a good question for him too.
Yeah, there's actually, man, there's a worksheet that I put together with the guy who teaches film at BYU for his students to. It's like this is how you talk to your composer worksheet, and so
I want to see that.
see that? I know. It's pretty useful. Mostly, it's like never use passive language. Micah hates that, and we aren't changing anything in this.
Did I do that? Did I use passive language?
No, you were great. So let me talk about the difference working with a good filmmaker like Dave Boyle and another filmmaker who I didn't like working very much with, who I won't name names because that was no. Man, with Dave, it's like he gave me the vision and said, go for it. And luckily he likes my music. With this other one, the worst thing you can do, I think, with your composer is micromanage him or her. It's like the best way to work with a composer is get a good composer. And I mean, like, I don't mean to like be up here tooting my own horn, like I'm one of those. But like the way that you go about that is you're a fan of someone's music, really. You're a fan of what they do, and you feel comfortable in their hands, and you feel like they're competent at what they're doing. So it is more of a collaboration. Obviously, you're going to say no a lot to the things that they do, or you're going to say, you know, shift this attitude. Because when you're talking to your composer, you're talking to him in, these are the adjectives that I want my audience to feel that is not being portrayed on screen by my actor, by my cinematographer, by my editor. Let those guys do their job, let the composer do his job. Your composer's job is not to put lipstick on a pig. It's not to like tell you, you're supposed to be scared right now, unless you are supposed to be scared, but the guys on screen aren't doing that, you know? Like realize what your composer's job is, and have them do that job. So many times, too many times, I've worked with directors who are like making money in the industry, who are doing, who are making a living, who haven't learned that yet, who don't know that yet. So, but Dave has, and that's great. Good job, Dave.
Yeah, I didn't have to do anything. I just I find that composers hate to be told which instruments to use.
Well, for this one, I just invented my own instruments, so you didn't have to do that at all.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, well, I didn't invent the piano, so never mind for that one. But it was... So there's a couple of things that stand out. Okay, so for Aki's, well, actually, it got used a lot more than just for Aki, but I was searching for this particular sound, and what I ended up making was I bought a violin and I tore the body off of it and I put it on a stainless steel bowl, and then I attached it to the bowl and I put some water in it, and then as you play it, you kind of walk around a little bit and it makes this like whoa, whoa, whoa. Makes this like weird, like you'll hear it a lot. If you watch the movie again, you'll hear it a lot in the movie, especially. I made it particularly for the scene where she is maybe going to commit suicide. You know, she's in the bath. That's the main instrument that takes over. And I just needed something that was kind of pretty, but also very like unsettling and eerie. Maybe eerie is going too far, but kind of unsettling. And that just hit it for me perfectly. And I guess Dave thought so too, because he let me keep it in the movie.
Yeah, I thought it sounded great.
Cool.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, collaboration with a composer or anybody else is you know, it's great. I always gotta have the last word, even though I don't have anything to say.
All right, are we done? Any other questions for Micah, for Dave? Hey, Dave, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
So great to have you here always, and thanks for your support of UVU. Dave met with us in LA and has, throughout my time here, has done things. And in fact, we screened Wine and Rice back here together back in the day.
No.
Yeah, we did. Do you remember coming here? That's when I first met the UVU film professors.
I don't remember that. Wow,
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I don't know if we actually, I don't think we screened the movie. We just did like a Q&A. We showed the trailer and some stuff. Anyway, whatever. So,
6 years ago.
Years ago, in another life. All right, guys. Thanks again, Dave, and have a good night. Say hi to Mike.
Oh, Dave, actually, I've got one more question. Sorry, can I ask you one more question for you?
Yeah.
I had the little cursor on the stop broadcast.
So, I just got to know, the cat on the dock, is that the cat that was walking on the keyboard? Same cat?
No. That cat just wandered into a shot. That Blu-ray has that Blu-ray that Duane has like a behind-the-scenes documentary, and it explains about the cats among.
Because you have
many
there's
other-
several they're like cookies throughout the movie, right? I mean, like cupcakes or whatever, just hidden cats throughout this movie. Yeah.
It's only available right now from manfromrenomovie.com.
Yes. manfromreno.com. Go buy your own.
Nice.
I mean, it's on Netflix, but you can't get the behind-the-scenes documentary on Netflix. So there you go. Boom.
All right, Dave. Thank you. You're the greatest.
You guys. We'll
Talk
see
to
ya.
you later. Bye bye.
All right.